Welcome, Denise Dresser. We're very pleased to be doing this interview. Tom Friedman, the New York Times columnist, recently did 2 columns on Mexico. The most recent is called "Is Mexico the Comeback Kid?" And going to Monterey, interviewing people in the high-tech sector, he pointed to Mexico's potential going forward. What did you think about the columns?
I think the columns form part of a change that is occurring in terms of media coverage, opinion, views on Mexico. There is a change in the narrative. For 6 years, Mexico was a basket case, a source of endless violence. Coverage was extremely negative, and I think this had to do with former President Calderón's almost obsessive focus on the war on drugs. And it's what he devoted all of his energies and attention to, and it had very counterproductive results. An increasing violence, 26,000 people who disappeared, and a portrayal of Mexico vis-a-vis the world that positioned Mexico as a country that was almost tantamount to a failed state. I think one of the things that the incoming government of Enrique Peña Nieto has tried to do is to change the conversation. No longer focus on the war on drugs, but rather focus on reforms, on change, on modernization, on taking on the veto powers and the creatures of the state that have held Mexico back. He's trying to create a new narrative, and I think his administration is very media savvy. I think they've sent out an army of spokesmen to get favorable coverage. Not only Tom Friedman's column, but there was a very significant piece in the Financial Times called Aztec Tiger. There was a very good piece in the New York Times about how Mexico was going to become the new China in terms of its manufacturing base. So I see a deliberate, concerted effort on the part of the new Mexican government to change the way in which Mexico is viewed from abroad. And that has been accompanied at the same time with changes that have occurred in Mexico that had been obscured by the coverage that focused solely on drugs, violence, and drug trafficking. And it has to do with a certain level of modernization taking place in terms of technology, of manufacturing. Good news coming out of Mexico that really didn't form part of the coverage or of what we knew about the country over the past 6 years. And I also think there's somewhat of a herd mentality taking place, which is in light of Brazil's faltering and facing structural problems with its own economy, and with China slowing down, it's almost as if foreign investors and foreign opinion makers need a new story, a new success story. And Mexico has become that success story due to its macroeconomic stability, its financial discipline, where relative to other emerging markets, it's starting to look pretty good, particularly when accompanied by a president who's trying to present himself as a reformer, as a modernizer, as someone who is moving away from the traditional policy making of the Revolutionary Institutional Party, and who is going to, at some level, take the system on in order to push forward Mexico's modernization. So I think the combination of factors, in other words, no longer the focus on drugs, no longer the war on crime, more of an emphasis on structural reform, plus the search among foreign investors for a new success story. All of this has created an environment in which Mexico is viewed in much more favorable terms by people like Tom Friedman, like Shannon O'Neill, who also has a piece in Foreign Affairs about how Mexico has made it. And that's what's happened. Although I'd say that one must be careful and also take this with a grain of salt, because while we can speak positively about certain things that have happened in Mexico, it's important to understand that the violence remains. The numbers just came out, and the violence has not slowed in the first 2 months of the Peña Nieto administration. And many of the deep-rooted problems of corruption, of the intermittent aspect of the rule of law, a very shaky judicial system, the complicity and collusion among drug traffickers and high-level officials, many of those problems remain. So I think as analysts, as observers of Mexico, we should not jump on the pendular shift that quickly. I think we have to have a more reasoned, a more broader and more complex understanding of the country.
Thank you, Denise Dresser.
Thank you.